Welcome to My Dreams Academy.
Good day and welcome to today's episodes of My Dreams Academy online tutorials. My name is Victor Silva and I'm your tutor for today. But before we continue, remember to subscribe to our channel and click on the notification icon in order to get notified about our videos subsequently. Remember, the subscription is once and for all. Thank you very much. Okay, today we are going to have a class on the chemistry of carbohydrates. It's not a very strange topic, it's something we all know. Even those that are not science students have heard about carbohydrates, which is the popular energy giving food. But today, more than just carbohydrates as the energy giving food, we are going to look at the chemistry of carbohydrates. So I'm going to start with a brief outline which shows the introduction, the functions of carbohydrates, the classification, the structure, and the isomerism as it has to do with carbohydrates chemistry. Now, by way of introduction, carbohydrate, like I've already said, is known as the energy giving food, but by definition it is defined as a polyhydroxyaldehyde or a polyhydroxyketone that is optically active, or substances that are derived from this by hydrolysis. I'm going to take it again. Carbohydrate is a polyhydroxyaldehyde or a polyhydroxyketone that is optically active Then we have this, we also have the compounds that are derived from this by hydrolysis. So that is what carbohydrate is all about. I'll take them one after the other. By polyhydroxy, we mean that each carbohydrate molecule has so many OH groups. So we have OH group or the hydroxy group. It is common to all carbohydrates. Every carbohydrate has more than one OH group. That is why it is called a polyhydroxy. Then it can have an aldehyde functional group or a ketone functional group. We will still come to that under classification, but that is how the definition goes. So let me take it again. Carbohydrate is a polyhydroxyaldehyde or a polyhydroxyketone which is optically active, or a substance that is derived from these by hydrolysis. Hydrolysis means breaking down a compound with a water molecule. So when you break down these compounds by hydrolysis, both the compounds you derive after the breakdown and the compounds that give the breakdown, that is what carbohydrate is all about. Now, the functions of carbohydrates are diverse both in biology and in the industries. Biologically, carbohydrates serve as energy source, both as immediate sources of energy and as energy stores. So when you go outside to play some game, you go to play football, it's carbohydrate that provides the energy that enables you to do that rigorous exercise. And when you stay in your bed, you've not eaten in a while, and you stay overnight fast, it's also carbohydrate that keeps you through the fast. That's why when you come in the morning, you take a break fast, you are breaking the fast, and what has been keeping you through the fast is carbohydrate. So carbohydrate serves both as an immediate source of energy and as an energy store. So in plants, carbohydrate is stored as starch, and in animals it is stored as glycogen. Now, apart from the energy function, carbohydrate also has some other physiologic and biochemical functions. One of them is that carbohydrates serves for cell signaling. There are complex carbohydrates found in cell membranes called glycoproteins. You also have the glycolipids. They function in the transfer of information from the outside to inside, which is known as cell signaling. It is also a function of carbohydrates. Now, in plants, carbohydrates form the bulk of the plant cell wall, which is called cellulose. Cellulose is a component of plant cell wall, and it is made up of carbohydrates, and it is the most abundant organic compound on earth. So if cellulose, which is a carbohydrate, is the most abundant organic molecule on earth, that means that carbohydrates are the most abundant organic molecules on earth. So, but we are not going to dwell on the functions. We are going to look at other things about carbohydrates. And one of the most important things about carbohydrates is how it is classified. Generally, carbohydrates are classified based on the number of sugar subunits. Carbohydrates are classified based on sugar subunits. So we have three classes here. We have the monosaccharides, we have the disaccharides, we have the oligosaccharides, and then we have the polysaccharides. Needless to say, the suffix saccharide represents sugar. So when we say a monosaccharide, we mean a carbohydrate that has one sugar subunit. So monosaccharides have one sugar subunit. Mono means one, saccharide means sugar unit. So monosaccharide, one sugar unit. Now, secondly, we have the disaccharide, and as the name implies, it has two sugar subunits. So disaccharide means two sugar units. And I need to stress this, that the two sugar units that make up a disaccharide may be of the same or different monosaccharides. What do I mean by this? A glucose and another glucose can come together and form a glycosidic bond to give you a disaccharide. A glucose can also come together with another monosaccharide, say fructose for example, to give you a disaccharide. So a disaccharide is a sugar that is made up of two sugar subunits, and those two subunits may be the same or different monosaccharides. Then we have the third one, which is the oligosaccharide. Oligosaccharide comprises between 3 and 10 sugar units. Oligosaccharide, etymologically, oligo means a few. So we have between 3 and 10 sugar units give you an oligosaccharide. Now, from above 10 to infinity is called a polysaccharide. So when you have a sugar that has from 11 and above sugar units, we call it a polysaccharide. The most popular examples there are the cellulose, you also have the starch, you have the glycogen, the amylose, amylopectin, and the rest of them, they are polysaccharides. Let me take them all over again. This is a classification based on the number of sugar subunits. So first of all, you have the monosaccharide that has one sugar subunit. You have the disaccharide, two sugar subunits. You have the oligosaccharide between 3 and 10, and then finally you have the polysaccharides that have from above 10 to infinity. I'm going to take them one after the other. So under monosaccharides, which I have explained to be a carbohydrate that has one sugar subunit, we have so many examples. So under monosaccharides, we have a classification that is based on the functional group that is found in the monosaccharide. Remember, as a rule, generally, carbohydrates, they all have the hydroxy functional group. But what serves as the basic functional group of each carbohydrate molecule is the other functional group apart from OH, and that is the more oxidized functional group, or what you can say to be the most oxidized functional group in the sense when they are more than 2. But if they are just 2, you have the OH, then you have any other functional group. So that other functional group, if it is more oxidized than the OH, becomes the functional group of the carbohydrate. Let me take it all over again. Monosaccharides have OH group as a general functional group, but in addition to this, they also have another functional group which is more oxidized than OH. So some of them have the aldehyde functional group as a CHO functional group. So carbohydrates that have the aldehyde functional group are said to be aldoses. Remember, the suffix "ose" means sugar, and aldehyde, and ald is short for aldehyde. So aldoses means aldehyde sugars. That is, sugars that have the aldehyde group as the most oxidized functional group. An example is the glucose, the mannose, and the galactose. There are so many of them, but we have glucose, mannose, and galactose. Secondly, we have the sugars that have the keto functional group. So the ketone functional group, which is R, C to another R. So these sugars are called the ketoses. So the O's there, as we already know, means sugar, and the keto means that it has a ketone functional group. The most perfect example is the fructose. And fructose is the sweetest sugar. Fructose is the sweetest of all sugars. It is present in honey, and it has its own biological importance, but we'll dwell on the chemistry for now. Okay, so secondly, those that have the ketone functional group are called the ketoses, and we have some examples, fructose being the most popular. And apart from fructose, all other ketone sugars stop with illose. We have the ribulose, we have the erythrulose, we have the xylulose, and we have so many of them, but these three are ketoses together with fructose. Now, still under monosaccharides, there is another criterion for classification, and that is the number of carbon atoms. So monosaccharides can be classified based on the number of carbon atoms. So we have the monosaccharides that have 3 carbon atoms. They are called the trioses. So the trioses, they have 3 carbon atoms, and of all the trioses, the most important are the glyceraldehyde and the dihydroxyacetone. So we have under trioses, we have the glyceraldehyde, and we have the dihydroxyacetone, DHAP for short. So these two are trioses. They are called trioses because they have 3 carbon atoms. And remember, we are still under monosaccharides, which have 1 sugar subunit, but that sugar subunit can either have an aldehyde or a ketone functional group, which gives rise to aldoses and ketoses, and it can also have another criterion is when you classify based on the number of carbon atoms. So we have the trioses that have 3 carbon atoms. We also have the tetroses, even though they are not very important, but we have the tetroses and they have 4 carbon atoms. We have the pentoses and they have 5 carbon atoms. The pentoses are particularly important because they form the backbone of nucleic acids. So in the nucleic acids, which are DNA and RNA, we have pentoses as the sugar units there. So in DNA, we have deoxyribose, and in RNA we have the ribose. So deoxyribose and ribose are examples of pentoses. And what do we mean by pentoses? We mean monosaccharides with 5 carbon atoms. So DNA, which is the deoxyribonucleic acid, has the deoxyribose. That's where the name comes from. That's a nucleic acid with deoxyribose. It's deoxyribonucleic acid. And we have the RNA, which contains ribose. So the name comes from a nucleic acid that has ribose. So it is called ribonucleic acid. But it is worth to mention that deoxyribose is not found in nature. It is found in a molecule of DNA, but it is from RNA, because what we first get is an RNA. But when the sugar unit of the RNA loses one oxygen atom at carbon 2, so when you remove an oxygen from carbon 2, you get your deoxyribose. So deoxyribose is not found in nature. What is found in isolation is ribose. So deoxyribose is a derivative of ribose in an already formed molecule of nucleic acid. Is that clear? Now we have our hexoses, and they contain 6 carbon atoms. So hexoses are monosaccharides that contain 6 carbon atoms, and the most popular examples, we have the glucose. Under hexoses, we have the glucose, we have the fructose, we have the mannose, we have the galactose, etc. So these are hexoses, and they are called hexoses because they contain 6 carbon atoms. Now we are going to talk about the disaccharides, and by definition there are carbohydrates that are made up of 2 sugar subunits, and as I've said earlier, the 2 sugar subunits or the 2 monosaccharide subunits that make up the disaccharide may be the same or different. So examples of disaccharides, we have the sucrose, and this sucrose is made up of glucose and fructose. We have the maltose, which is made up of glucose and another glucose. We also have the lactose, which is made up of glucose and galactose. So if we look very well, we discover that glucose is a single monosaccharide that is found in all disaccharides. So when you must have a disaccharide, it means you must have a glucose and any other monosaccharide. So when you have glucose and fructose, you get sucrose. Maltose is when you combine glucose and another glucose, and lactose is when glucose comes together with galactose. And when all these sugars come together, they form a bond, and the bond is called a glycosidic bond. And this bond is accompanied by a loss of one water molecule. So when you form a glycosidic bond, there is a loss of H2O. So in organic chemistry, it is known as condensation polymerization. So call it condensation polymerization. Conventionally, it is defined as a type of polymerization where 2 or more monomers come together to give a polymer with the loss of a small molecule. So the small molecule in this case is a water molecule. So when you form a glycosidic bond between 2 monosaccharide subunits, you get a disaccharide with the formation of a glycosidic bond and the loss of a water molecule. Now, the glycosidic bond that exists in sucrose is between the C1 of glucose and the C2 of fructose. So this is sucrose, a disaccharide that comprises glucose and fructose. So the formation of the glycosidic bond is between the carbon 1 of glucose and the carbon 2 of fructose. So it is an alpha 1,2 glycosidic bond. So you say it is alpha 1,2 glyco bond. Now we take the second one, maltose, which has to do with 2 glucose subunits. So maltose has glucose and glucose, When they form the glycosidic bond, it is between the carbon 1 of one glucose and the carbon 4 of the other glucose. So what you have there is alpha 1 4 glycosidic bond. So in lactose, which contains glucose and galactose, the glycosidic bond of lactose is a beta glycosidic bond, but we'll understand the implication when we look at the isomerism. But for now, the lactose is formed by glucose and galactose, and the glycosidic bond is a beta bond, and it is found between the carbon 1 of glucose and carbon 4 of galactose. So it is a beta 1,4 glycosidic bond. You must have heard about lactose intolerance in human beings and other mammals. It is because of this beta bond, because the enzymes found in the digestive tract of human beings are only specialized to hydrolyze alpha bonds. That is why beta bonds is a problem for mammalian digestive tract, because they don't have enzymes that hydrolyze beta bonds. So this is all about the disaccharides. They are made up of 2 monosaccharide subunits. So we have the popular examples being sucrose, which is made up of glucose and fructose. We have the maltose made up of glucose and glucose, and we have the lactose made up of glucose and galactose, and all these things have the glycosidic bond as a common bond between all of them. So about the oligosaccharides, they contain between 3 and 10 sugar subunits. So they are called the oligosaccharides. Oligo means a few. So between 3 and 10 is the number of sugar subunits that is contained in an oligosaccharide. There are not so many examples of oligosaccharides in nature, but the most popular one is the raffinose. So we move over to the polysaccharides, which is more important to our study. The polysaccharides contain from 11 to infinity. So any carbohydrate molecule that has above 10 sugar subunits is qualified to be classified under polysaccharides. Of the most popular examples of polysaccharides, we have the starch, which consists of amylose and amylopectin. We have the cellulose, we have the glycogen, and so many of them. These are polysaccharides because they consist of more than 10 sugar subunits. So on starch is the storage form of carbohydrates in plants, and starch has a soluble part, amylose or amylose, and an insoluble part called the amylopectin. 2 of them are also polysaccharides, and these polysaccharides, they can either consist of the same monosaccharide or different monosaccharides. So a polysaccharide that is comprised of the same type of monosaccharide is called a homopolysaccharide. And the one that consists of different sugar subunits are called the heteropolysaccharides. So all of these are examples of homopolysaccharides because both starch, cellulose, glycogen, amylose, amylopectin, and the rest of them, they are all made up of glucose subunits. But in starch, they are branched and they are alpha bonds. So I mentioned the glycosidic bond when I was discussing disaccharides. The glycosidic bonds are also found in polysaccharides, but there are many of them because in disaccharides you have just one glycosidic bond, but in polysaccharides there are thousands, hundreds, or even millions of glycosidic bonds. So in starch you have alpha glycosidic bonds, That is why starch can be digested by humans and mammals, but in cellulose we have the beta glycosidic bond. That is why no human natural enzyme can digest cellulose. Herbivores can digest cellulose, but not based on the enzymes they produce on their own. Some herbivores, like the rabbits, have a cellulase producing bacteria. Cellulase is the enzyme that digests cellulose, but it is not produced by human tissues. It is through the help of bacteria that's present in the digestive tract. So you have the cellulase producing bacteria found in the cecum of rabbits. So it is through these enzymes that they are able to digest cellulose. The reason is because cellulose has a beta glycosidic bond, and the human enzymes are only specialized to digest alpha glycosidic bonds. So these all are examples of polysaccharides. We have the starch, which has the soluble part amylose and the insoluble part amylopectin, and it is a branched giant molecule. But we have the cellulose that has no branching. So we need to note that cellulose does not contain any branches. Cellulose is a straight giant molecule, as opposed to starch, which is a branched giant molecule. But both starch and cellulose are made of glucose subunits and multiple glycosidic bonds. Cellulose has an industrial application. What you know as sellotape is made up of cellulose. So cellulose is the building material of sellotape. So the name sellotape is from cellulose. Now we have the glycogen, which is the storage form of carbohydrates in animals. In human beings, we have glycogen that is the form of energy stored, which is found in the liver and in the skeletal muscle, most notably. So when you have not eaten in a while, maybe you had your dinner and you have to sleep and wake up in the morning, it is through the help of the glycogen stores in the muscles that you are able to be sustained, and also the glycogen stores in the liver. So glycogen is a polysaccharide. It is a branched giant molecule, and it is made up of glucose subunits through the help of alpha glycosidic bonds, so that when there is no immediate source of energy, it becomes the first line of defense. So the first line of defense of the body during acute starvation is the mobilization of the glycogen stores, and the glycogen are stored mainly in the liver and in the skeletal muscles. So now we are going to look at the structure of carbohydrates. So we're going to start with the structure of monosaccharides. So the most popular of them is the glucose. So by the time we understand the structure of glucose, from there we can develop the structure of other monosaccharides. So glucose, as we have already noted, is a hexose, which means that it has 6 carbon atoms. We know that already. And glucose is an aldose, which means that it has the aldehyde functional group. So as we are drawing the structure of glucose, we are going to keep in mind that number 1, glucose is a hexose, and that glucose is an aldose, which means it has the aldehyde functional group. So we have to note that whatever we are drawing, we have to do with this. So having this in mind, we can now develop the structure of glucose. So we take the carbon skeleton. So we can do a count: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this shows that it is a hexose. And when we were defining carbohydrates in the first part of the lecture, we defined carbohydrate as polyhydroxyaldehydes or polyhydroxyketone. But glucose here is a polyhydroxyaldehyde. That means it has so many hydroxyl groups, but it has to have a configuration which differentiates it from other monosaccharides. So this is the easiest way to draw glucose. When you make out the carbon skeleton, take here and consecutively put 3 hydrogen atoms on this side. And you know that whenever you have a hydrogen atom on one side, what you should have on the other side is a hydroxy group, which is an OH. So the first thing to do in a carbohydrate, when you are drawing a glucose, is to take H, H, and H, and you complete the other side with OH, OH, and OH, and then you put a H here. So this is the first part. As you are drawing glucose, when you make out the outline of the carbon skeleton, you put a H here, you come 1, 2, 3. So the last 3 carbons, okay, the first 3 if you're counting from the bottom, the first 3 have H, H, and H. So after you get here, you start alternating. So that means you have to put an OH here and a H here, and then another alternation, you have to put a H here and an OH here. So this is the last carbon, and this is the carbon that has the functional group. So you do it this way, and then you put a H here. So this carbon that has the functional group is called the anomeric carbon. And for glucose, as well as for every other aldose, the anomeric carbon is found on carbon 1. But in ketosis, the anomeric carbon is found on carbon 2. So this is our glucose molecule, and the empirical formula for glucose is the CH2O X. This X is the multiple. You can use it to multiply this. So that is why it is called a carbohydrate, because it is a hydrate of carbon. This is the hydrate part, the H2O, and this is carbon. So for glucose, we have the molecular formula as C6H12O6. So if you run a count, you can be able to achieve this. So we have C6. So let's do the count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have H12. So we can take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we've arrived at C6. We also arrived at H12. So let's know whether we can get O6. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have C6, H12, O6 as the molecular formula of glucose, and this is the structural formula, and this is the empirical formula. So this is the empirical formula of glucose. Empirical. This is the molecular formula. And this here is the structural formula. So this is one of the many ways that glucose can be represented structurally. This is called the linear structure of glucose. Glucose also has a ring structure. So what I represented here is the linear structure of glucose, also known as the Fisher's model. Glucose can be represented in 2 structures, either in the linear structure, otherwise known as the Fisher's model, or the ring structure. And the ring structure can be in 2 ways, but glucose is just one of them. In ring structure, you can have the pyranose, and you can have the furanose. So pyranose is a 6-membered ring, 6 members, and furanose is a 5-membered ring, so it has 5 members. But glucose is a pyranose or a pyranose because it has a 6-membered ring, and the ring goes this way. You have this, you have this, and this, and like this, and like this. Then you have your CH2OH. Then you put your OH, and H. So this here is the ring structure of glucose, and it has a 6-membered ring. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But this is not the way the carbon is counted. If you do the counting, you start from here. This is carbon 1, carbon 2, carbon 3, carbon 4, carbon 5, and carbon 6. So this is the pyranose, and it is the ring representation of glucose. what we did here is the linear representation. So taking it all over again, glucose can be represented by two structures, which is the linear structure or the Fisher's model, and we have the ring structure that depicts glucose as a 6-membered ring known as a pyranose. And when you do the counting, you do it clockwise. So you come from here, come like this. This is carbon 1, carbon 2, carbon 3, carbon 4, carbon 5, and carbon 6. So it's a clockwise counting, and it is called pyranose, which represents a 6-membered ring.